Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's NDPA webinar on drowning data and the role of commercial aquatic facilities in drowning prevention. I'm Adam Ketchmarchi. I'm the Executive Director of the National Drowning Prevention Alliance. We're very lucky today to be joined by another expert, Mick Nelson. Mick is the Senior Director of Aquatic Facilities Development Department at USA Swimming. Attendees can participate in today's webinar by using the chat and the question and answer function at the bottom of the screens. We'll try to get to as many of your questions as possible throughout the webinar. Before we get started, I would like to take time to thank our sponsor, D&D Technologies, for sponsoring today's webinar. D&D has been a longtime supporter of the NDPA. We thank them for their sponsorship and their partnership. And as a reminder, previous webinars are available for viewing at ndpa.org, and this webinar will be available within 48 hours. So it's now time to meet today's panelists. I'd like to introduce Mick Nelson with USA Swimming. And Mick, thanks for wearing an NDPA shirt today and repping our brand.
Hey, I wear it every day I can, you know?
I love it.
Spread the message.
So, Mick, do you want to start off by giving us a little bit about your background and how you got started with this?
I'm actually fourth generation in what we are going to label as aquatics. My grandparents were part of Red Cross Rescue. My parents, therefore, my uncles also became part of Red Cross Rescue. And that's basically is when you go out on site and you try to recover a drowning victim. Very rudimentary in those days. My mother became an aquatics director at a YWCA, excuse me, Richmond, Indiana. And then when we moved to Danville, Illinois, when I was probably about 10 years old, 11 years old, she again became an aquatics director, and eventually in the early 60s started her own swim school. So I had no way I could escape this. I was raised swimming, throwing back and forth in La Swordsdale Lake in Indiana by my uncle and my dad. I have no idea what it feels like to have fear of a normal body of water. I think the thing that got me involved mentally in drowning when I was really young, I think I was about 6 years old, and my dad took me on a call. It was at a gravel pit in Indiana, and he told me to stay in the car. And as you well know, I follow instructions really well. So I was standing back. He didn't even know I was there, and actually recovered. What I'm going to probably say at that age was a young man. I don't have any perspective at 6 years old. But what I do remember is the grappling iron going through his eye socket and the color he was when they pulled him up. That picture's always stayed with me. When I got out of formal education and came back with my wife, Sue, you hear me use the term we a lot today. When I say we, it's Sue and Nick, interchangeable. We both try to do everything we can to help aquatics. But when I came back from school, after 3 years in corporate America, we decided to build our own facility because there were none available. So we built a 12,000 square foot two-pool facility that was centered around learn to swim and competitive swimming. I think it would have really been fun or cool to be able to have the internet in 1972 because we were definitely isolated in our local community. We didn't know what drownings were going on around the country. We didn't know it was an epidemic even back then. Thank you to the internet for bringing this to us. Thank you to my family, my two sons, Dane and Kent, who forced me into the internet world, forced me into computers, and forced me into modern sharing of information, because that's when we became really involved, when going like, wow, there's more than drownings in St. Louis, Chicago, Indianapolis, and Louisville. This is going on, and wow, look at Florida. Wow, look at California. Look at Texas. Look at coastal places that have oceans. Look at Minnesota, that the land of 1,000 lakes. It became apparent. It should have been obvious, but we weren't living in a world of mass communications. So it wasn't obvious. It wasn't something we thought about. So when we went, this is a very encapsulated story also. I'm going to try and really keep it short. Failed already. But when we left our private businesses in Danville, Illinois, because we thought there were more goals to accomplish, more dragons to slay on the national level, we took and formed the positions at USA Swimming. I think that's when it became even more obvious of the importance of trying to do something about this issue of drownings. We went there in 2004, of course, starting a department, starting new lives in a new community. We were relatively busy and had to prioritize everything. But somewhere around 2006, again, with the internet growing, with everything, with the Googles and the Instagrams and we're back to some of the older programs, we started seeing news releases. We started seeing people talking about drownings. That's about the same time USA Swimming made the commitment to start the USA Swimming Foundation, to start the Make a Splash initiative about addressing children that didn't have all the opportunities others did to learn how to swim. We said, you know, you can say this is good, you can say this is important, but we live in the world of tell me about it and can you prove it? And I said, no, I can just tell you what I read. Well, that wasn't a very good answer, especially being in the public like we are. So in 2008, I said, we got to start tracking this. Well, how do we track it? Well, track it with something everybody needs. Number one, I don't want to charge for it. Number two, I don't want it to be some fancy data program that you have to go buy. Let's use Excel. Let's start tracking this and let's see where it takes us. Well, what do you track? Okay, well, obviously place, name, age, any brief circumstances so people don't have to read an entire, paragraph or an entire story. And I think the most fun thing was typing the first line. It was a tragedy, of course, but it was a challenge. Next thing you know, you've got 20 lines. Next thing you know, you've got 200 lines. As we sit here, now we've got 40,000 lines. And we added data as we went because people would say, well, what about? How can we handle foreign unders? What categories do we use? Well, we want to match. Obviously, with the CPSC and the CDC, we want to match up so that data can be shared. We can't have too many people collecting data, period, and giving us information to try to attack this. So that was all part of the evolution of the reports that we do every month and the tracking that we do every day of what to track. We add stuff all the time. If the information becomes available, we'll try to put it in a condensed form that people can use to try to reach a goal they're trying to accomplish. So that's the gist of it in 10 minutes. How we got started. And I guess we couldn't help it. It seems natural that if you're in a position that you can collect a lot of data, I think you need to do it. And USA Swimming has been phenomenal in supporting us on this. This takes a lot of time during this time of year out of the day that we're supposed to be doing other things for USA Swimming. I can't tell you the support that USA Swimming has given us to be able to do this, to be able to be part of the NDPA initiatives and other people. I think that's extremely important. And we're lucky to be in a situation that we have an organization behind us to assist us, period, end of sentence.
Well, and we appreciate USA Swimming for, allowing you to do this as part of your work, and obviously your commitment and support to NDPA. So let's get right into talking about the data that you collect. One thing that I'll just preface as a researcher and working with NDPA on a daily basis, we get a lot of requests for data. I'm in the data set with CDC and CPSC quite a bit, and the biggest challenge that I personally find, and I know a lot of others who are probably watching have had with that data, or a frustration point, is the fact it takes them a long time to report on that data. The most recent available CDC data for injuries is from 2017, and we're halfway through 2019. So, Mick, one thing I can say from the outset of this discussion on your data is this has been really important for us to be able to recognize immediate trends in drowning data. I don't know if everyone's aware of this, but you and your wife Sue collect the data, but also send it out once a month at the beginning of the month. Correct?
Yeah, you just missed it by one day. Otherwise, I would have the new spreadsheet. Obviously, is up. I recorded the last drowning of today. We record 5 times a day. The first one in the morning is we get up at 4. I get up at 4 o'clock, and by 6:30 now, I've got it recorded for this time of year. Other times of year, December and January, that may only take me 25 or 30 minutes, but there's only 4 or 5 drownings. Now we're running in the 20s, 30s, and 40s every day. But yeah, we record this 5 times a day. Just before you got on, had 3 of them come in, New Mexico, New York, and Florida, and also 4 of them, Connecticut. So we're recording yesterday's drownings today. Our dates are not finite. If somebody wants to try to collect data on a specific day, ours is probably not the data to use because I'm still recording things that are getting reported from early yesterday. We're pretty much always a day behind because that's just the nature of the beast. But we've got 4 in recording today. At the end of the day, let's put it this way, tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., we'll close out July. That's when the email reports, and there's 4 things that we email out to people that would like to sign up for the email blast that talks about this and gives them information that they can use locally. That will be ready to go by about 8 a.m. tomorrow. It takes about 2 hours to double check everything. Not that we still won't have an error that we'll have to correct later, but we feel like it's as accurate as we can possibly get it. So tomorrow, the July and the total report from when we started this plus other documents will be sent out. So we're missing it by about a day. I can tell you, going into this morning, we had already exceeded the drownings for 2018 and 2017 July. Not by staggering amounts. Obviously 1 is important and too much, but the reality of it is we try to see it drop each year. And it hasn't been doing that a lot. It's been holding pretty consistent. So I'm going to say tomorrow when we send out the report, it will be very, very, very similar to the last 2 years. Don't charge for the report. It goes out by email. And if you want to get on that list, you would email Sue Nelson and she would add you to the list, and it keeps going until you say, I don't want it anymore. So.
And Mick, just confirm, I'm going to put this in the chat box for everyone. So if they want to email Sue and get a copy of the data when it goes out tomorrow, it's snelson@usaswimming.org.
snelson@usaswimming.org. Okay. And that's, if you email me, I'll give it to her, mnelson@usaswimming.org. But that's a pretty large list right now. I'd like to see it be 10 times that size because that shows that you're trying to do something locally. You're making an effort. Not everybody is as unfortunate as the members of one of our favorite organizations, Families United, that they have had it happen in their immediate families. There's a lot of people out there that are ambassadors. They don't want to see it happen in their immediate family. So they're either involved in local drowning coalitions, or some of them are just interested. They're interested in how can I help? So yeah, snelsonusa.org. Get on the list and we'll send it to you. And it happens every month, usually on the first day of the month. Sadly enough, even if that's Christmas Day, you know, or holiday season, you will get it on the first of the month, because we think it's that important to have a consistency of when to accept it.
So, Mick, I know you want to go through a number of elements to your data and some of the trends you've been seeing. But before we do that, could you talk a little bit about how others have used this data? How is it being utilized by people around the country? Can you give some examples?
Okay, start with the new. We decided that we needed to look as many visual tools as possible. So this year we said we're going to do in map form children. That's not our only focus. Obviously, it's one of our more emotional focuses, but we want to be able to, in a map form, start popping the ages of children that drowned during the year. We did that. That map is sent out every month, and it gets bigger every month. I wish it wouldn't, but it does. Not map, not itself, but the numbers. One thing we just found out that I thought I didn't even really think about it is our own organization, sister organization, USA Swimming Foundation, and our Make a Splash. They do a Make a Splash tour where we spend a lot of resources to go around and spread the word about the importance of learn to swim. Our Make a Splash program, they're starting to look at this and seeing, well, this seems to have a lot of numbers in this area of this state. Maybe we should look at taking the tour to that area. Okay, now that's a big picture one. Other people, there's a lot of great people out there doing wonderful work. Texas, you know, I shouldn't have even said that, because now I have Arizona, Florida. They're all over the place. We have great local people. I think in almost every area. They're using it as comparative. Did we miss one? Did I miss one? Or we didn't get this information about the total picture about this drowning. They get more information. Probably a lot of them probably aren't tracking adults. We do, because 63.7% of drownings are adults. We track them all because you can't solve one problem without addressing the other problem. But they're using it for comparison figures. Some people, they don't have the resources to say, hey, this is your job. Go ahead and spend 5 hours a day as a volunteer to collect this data. So they're pretty much using our data to try to get different initiatives going in their area. So I think it's used a lot of different ways. How it is used has come back to us. This is how we've added the notes, the hidden notes next to drowning if it's appropriate. We've just added flooding and gone back a couple years and then updated our totals for flooding. We'll talk about that when we go through the spreadsheet, but that's how we get new categories or mention what has now we've been told is an important thing to someone. So we'll start tracking it. So I don't think there's a limit to how you use it. That's why we try to make it as expansive as we do.
Sure. We actually just had a question come in that I think is a good place to insert this. The question is, what type of data mining robot are you using, like a Google alert, press clippings, and to help you collect your data?
Yeah, that's on the spreadsheet because people ask that question a lot. We subscribe to over 200 local online newspapers. We use Google, we use Mention, we use a couple pay-for services. So we're using everything available to us. We probably wouldn't have had as good a luck as we've had percentage-wise 15 years ago. But I'm telling you right now, the way the web press is, I think we're picking up a very large percent of the drownings. I will tell you that we spend a lot of time looking and reading about duplicate things that we get from different sources. So especially if it's a child. Just with keywords, and we have over 50 keywords. Fortunately, my younger son it works in computers. He is of a major corporation that's also involved in aquatics. He is their marketing person through the web. So I'm not just doing this like, oh, I think I'll try to do this and see if it works. I've got help. So he's constantly saying, well, here's this, we can do this, we can do this. But there's a lot of resources, and those resources are at the far right of the spreadsheet. And we even listed the newspapers that we subscribe to. Because even if you're in a metro area or a larger city, they still pick up the smaller areas around them. Mm-hmm. We think we're getting much. We actually have a thing on our website. I just had a little conversation last month with a newspaper reporter that they were trying to do something, and I never did really get a handle on what they were trying to do. But they kept questioning my data, and I, being representing USA Swimming and no longer being in the private sector, I can't just say, well, why did you call me? I just say, here's what we do, here's what we do. Well, we're not sure. I said, then don't do it. Don't do it. If you don't feel comfortable, and if you're not smart enough to be able to say, we're trying to make a point, not report every drowning, then, don't do it. Just go to your old data and use it. But we have a right at the top of the spreadsheet, we had the statement, and I'll just read it to you. To date, we know of no organization or system that tracks 100% of the drownings in the USA. Our goal is to accurately record as much data as possible each day. After 11 years of data collection, we feel confident this information is extremely accurate when used to establish trends that can assist with drowning prevention initiatives. Some of our sources are listed to the far right of the spreadsheet. And then when they get the spreadsheet, that way they can answer questions if someone's asking them.
Excellent.
So we're trying to establish trends, and we want to establish trend. That's not the end goal. The end goal is to do something different that affects the statistics. Okay, so if I missed one, I missed one. Right now we're dealing with 24,373 drownings. So if it was 74, I bet you it doesn't affect a trend.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and one thing I want to say is, coming from a research standpoint is, I would get questioned, why aren't you just using or looking at CDC data? And I said this before, and, you brought it up that their data takes a long time to turn around, and sure, that may be the U.S. official or U.S. government's official data for drowning. But one thing that I use your data for all the time, Mick, is just to look at trends and how we're doing. And I think that's the important thing. If you're missing some, you're still being able to show a general trend line on where we're sitting at, today, or tomorrow at the end of July, you'll be able to show us that, where we won't know that for, over 2 years from CDC. So I see you brought your spreadsheet up.
I'm glad I did, because I also got an advertisement, host your own Zoom meeting, and now I can't figure out how to get out of it.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. See, that's the other thing that's really fun. When I'm doing this in the morning, the amount of, first of all, I have to have about every available known blocker and virus. And it is so hard to get through a web page anymore without trying to be sold a set of tires or a condo. It's almost impossible. I'm trying to figure out how now to show.
So we can see your spreadsheet up on the screen.
Oh, good. All right. So the top of the spreadsheet has a lot of information on it that I use to collect a summary data on the right, which we'll go to in a minute. But here's our format. First of all, going left to right, the date it happened, the 2-digit code of the state it happened in, the age if reported, and it could be, sometimes it is a week, sometimes it's 3 or 4 weeks. But if we don't have the age, we're going to go try and go back and get it. And that's part of our secondary searches in the morning after we get everything recorded, is to go back and see if there's any new stuff that we can add in. The age of the person is then categorized. This is a 13 to 19-year-old that I'm highlighting now, if you can see my arrow. Whether they're male or female, where it happened, the name if recorded, and again, that's one of those things we're going to go back and try to get if they don't give it to us right away, where it happened, and then if there is a specific instance, like is there flooding, is there an above ground pool ladder, is there an emotional response, is there a rip current. One of the things that was the hardest was life jackets, because we can't tell whether there was a life jacket involved or not, or a non-life jacket involved, unless the report says that. And obviously, if everybody wore a life jacket around the water, our drowning stats would be so much, so much less. So when we say no life jacket or no LJ, that basically tells us that the article mentioned that. So we're accomplishing something there. Usually if the article mentions no personal flotation device or life jacket was used, there's usually something later in the article at the end that says, hey, here's what you should do around water. Never swim alone, but make sure you have a life jacket on, that kind of thing. So that's part of our recording. We also then, when we go to use the stats, we record and summarize. This is a summary table off to the right. We know that 20% of drownings, all ages and stages, adults through children, happen in pools. 25% in lakes, 27% in rivers, 10% in oceans, 7% in ponds, 2% in bathrooms, 1% in ditches, 0.02% in water parks, which I was amazed because we have 3 water park drownings this month. And that is so unusual. We've only had 46 in 8 years. It's one of the safest bodies of water because of the guards. Hot tubs, 12 and unders and teens and adults are tracked, 63.1%. I know it's 0.7 because I know the numbers that are going to be coming up. Males are 82%. That shows our intelligence level when compared to females. Hispanics, 7.7, African Americans, 6.1. We track that because a lot of our initiatives have to do with economic situations. And we're interested in trying to help that. So that's more of a USA Swimming necessary number, but if other people are using it, that's great. We know the most dangerous sport on the planet is fishing. 20% of our drownings are fishing related. 10% auto, 10% no life jacket. And I tell everybody, I bet you I can say that 95% are involved with people didn't have a life jacket on, but how do we get the word out? And that's a separate initiative all to itself. Emotional response. People went in to save somebody and for some reason didn't remember that they didn't know how to swim. And they end up drowning. And I would tell you over half the time the person they were trying to go in to save got to safety. It's extremely prevalent with pets. I don't know when people forgot that dogs usually know how to swim, but they want to go and try to save their dog when they fell in the water and then they don't come back. Grandparents are something we started tracking that was mentioned to us 5 or 6 years ago, that it seems to be a lot of grandparent pool in their backyard drownings. I said, yes, I can understand why. They're no longer used to monitoring kids or being vigilant with their with watching the children like they did when they raised kids. And they're dropped off at grandpa and grandma's house to spend the day. Grandma and grandpa no longer have all the safety devices that they should. They no longer have the ability to watch the child every minute. And so we know that almost, well, 11% are grandparent related. Avoidable, yeah. In the adult category, 30% alcohol and drug related. Flooding about 7%. Above ground pool ladders not being safety, being a ladder that should never have been sold and should never have been installed on a pool, 7.5%. And then lifeguards present, right around 1%. So those are the things that we have identified, other than situations that are unusual. We put notes beside every one that we think, here's one with rock jumping. That's becoming more and more prevalent. Cliff jump, there's another one. We think if it could add to somebody's initiative and help them, then we're going to add it and make mention of it so they can go use that information. Canoes used to be the most dangerous water vehicle. Kayaks have just blown by them. And why anybody would ever go in a kayak without a life jacket is beyond me. But some paddle boards and kayaks with no life jackets, are you guys really out of your minds? Yeah, well, they were. So that's what the spreadsheet looks like. When we send it out monthly, we will send out only July. And so people can do searches with keywords since it's on Excel. And then there's a second one that's the entire history of drownings. That's the one we're looking at now, is the entire history. So it goes down, thousands and thousands of lines. And then all you have to do, if you know how to use Excel, is highlight something and search for it. I want to know how many drownings there are in the state of, Arizona. All I have to do is highlight that column, and I can go do a basic search. And I can tell you right now that in the history that they can't find what I'm looking for. Well, it's because spreadsheets are fun. I'd love to blame them, but it's always humans that set up. But I do blame them in the morning because nobody's there to 645 Arizona, since we've been tracking. So there's all kinds of data you can pull out lakes, you can pull out whatever you want. Even we've started now adding, if you look at over here on the right-hand side, if I start on 44 Alabama, we've been doing this for about 2 months now. When the media is starting to share the place, the river name, the lake name, we're starting to record it. So we can identify deadly lakes. We know places like Lake Travis, Lake Mead, Lake Lanier. We know those are subject to more drownings than normal. Lake Michigan is up over 80% this year. Wow. Drownings compared to previous years. Lake Erie is jumped up way high also. So since the reporting is getting better, our collecting and listing data is also getting better. So that's, we've started putting that behind the city. And again, that's searchable information.
So Mick, we received a couple questions on your data. The first question is, does your data include drownings as a result of recreational boating incidents?
If they drown and it's reported as drowning, we don't list boating. There's a whole organization out there that you're going to be interviewing, as I understand, really quickly. That collects that. So yeah, it includes recreational boating. It includes if they drown, they drown. We're trying to record, again, trends. We record paddle boats. We record paddle boards, flotation devices, tubing, kayaking, canoeing. We don't necessarily automatically list motorboats. We can. That's just adding a note. If somebody feels that important, send me an email saying, please start noting if it's a boat and or a motorboat or this kind of thing, recreational. It just takes a second to add that in there.
Sure. The next question we had was on including diagnoses such as regarding autism specifically. Is that something that you're
Yes.
when that's
when you look under the name, and if we go down, and I don't know how far I'm going to have to go down, if you see an asterisk next to the name, it has to do with special circumstances. There's one. I did not get the name, but you'll see an asterisk. So if you go up here on the top, and it says adult or children with challenges, and if you go up here and obviously it's a pretty big spreadsheet for it to do all the searching, but it would pull up the total amounts, and every time you hit find next, the asterisk would come up. If it has a note, it may have something even more about it. Otherwise, we know that it was a special need.
So another question that came in, Mick, along the same lines. Do you record non-fatal drownings, or are they?
No, we tried. Yeah, I'm going to bog myself down my spreadsheet. It became too much. It wasn't something. We did that for about 4 months, and we know there's as many non-fatal drownings as there are fatal drownings. And it's just something that we said we're not doing it's not helping us. So we stopped doing it. That would have taken, that's a full-time 8-hour-a-day job. Yeah. And we don't have enough time to do that. So I think it would be something that would be interesting. So we knew what percentage. I hear all kinds of percentages from people that speak in front of organizations about drownings. You usually hear them say there's either more or at least as many non-fatal drownings as there are fatal drownings. I can't say whether that's right or wrong. They probably know something I don't. The non-fatal drownings are also not reported. Every time a lifeguard pulls somebody out of a pool, it doesn't make the press. Every time a parent pulls a kid out and the parent is intelligent enough to know CPR or had the opportunity to take CPR classes, and that's not reported. So I just don't think it's something that we can accurately identify.
Well, I think that's a good point. I mean, even the CDC makes estimates on the number of submersion injuries that were seen in emergency departments, but even then, those would not be likely reported through the media or through anything you're going to be able to find for your tracking. So, Mick, I know you had some other things you wanted to show us on your data, some of the visuals that you have created. Let's move on to those, and then we can move on to our next piece in the discussion.
Okay, did you get it?
I'm still seeing the spreadsheet on my end.
All right.
Do you need me to pull something up, Mick?
I just moved up a secondary spreadsheet. Resume share. I'll get the hang of this here by the time we're all done. All right. Now do you have it? Wait a minute. Let me get rid of this one. Now do you have it?
It still looks like it's frozen on that one.
Resume share. All right. I'm going to have to actually close this one. All right. Now, 3, 2, 1, go.
There we go.
Yeah, I get a medal after this. Come on, man. This will change tomorrow, but we also thought, how are we moving forward? Not we're taking credit for moving forward. How are all of us moving forward? Are we doing better? Are we doing worse? It's not us. We're basically trying to affect change. So we started compiling basic statistics. This is July. We don't have 2019 in there yet, but this compares the last 10 years. It shows we started in July of 2009 at 401 total drownings with 64 4 and unders, 23 12 and unders, or 12 through 5 really, 67 teenagers, and 247 adults. And then we can compare those for the month of July. Basic numbers, basic statistics. We do that for every month. And then when we want to say, okay, we did good in July, but how are we doing totally? At the very top of this spreadsheet, it is a compilation by the year. So we know, forget 2019 because it's not complete. It's in there, but just ignore that line. So we know in 2018, we had 2,077, which is better than 2017. Yeah, we're not us, but we're all making a difference, especially when you look at if you stayed up with population growth. These numbers would automatically increase by between 10 and 16% every year. We don't build that in. I don't want to build that in. I want to say, how are we doing? Not what should we be doing? So we know this is a composite, an overview. If the number's in red and underlined, that's a bad record. That's the highest it's been. And we don't want to see any more red numbers up there and no more underlined numbers. So, and I know I'm seeing stuff pop on your end. So do we want to talk about this at all? Or is it basic enough to just say, hey, this is it, and we email this out with the other spreadsheet?
Yeah, I mean, I think this makes pretty good sense. You know, this is something that I turn to just in my own personal experience every single month. This is the first spreadsheet I open, and you know, really looking at trends on how we're doing, and then you know, going further in depth after that. Make a couple questions I want to get to. One regarding your other spreadsheet. Drownings where lifeguards were present, such as single guard, multiple guard. Are you able to track that, or do you denote that?
No, I know that they said lifeguards went in and went, I don't know how many. I just know that the report said that lifeguards were there. All right. So when a lifeguard is there, I go ahead and list that there were guards there.
Sure.
They tell you, well, there were 6 guards and 3 of this and 3 of that, you know, that's not something that they,
So it's really contingent on the media report and what they're putting.
of course, you know, just like, you know, anybody, CDC's totally dependent upon emergency room reports.
Yep.
You know, we can only handle the information we're given. But if we look at that information and read everything available to us, we might be able to find something that helps.
Another question along these same lines: do you track which news agencies or newspapers reporting? And the reason given is, you know, this may be a valuable tool to reach out to communities where these drownings are occurring for.
The stuff we use is on the far right. I do not track it individually.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to Google and type in the name of the person that drowned, and all the listings of the 15 different resources that pick it up, you know, will come forward. That doesn't do me any good. That doesn't do, knowing who reported it when they're on our approved list and not some blog. We don't do blogs, by the way. We don't do Twitter. We don't do Instagram. We only do reliable sources. It's that I'm trying to get to the point of how can we help, not where did this come from, and drilling down to the name of the reporter and stuff like that. So no, I don't track that.
Sure. So before we move on, I know we're only going to have a couple minutes for the second part of our discussion, which I think that's just fine. I think this has been really good, solid information for our attendees. Can you pull up, I know you update a map of the U.S. with the number of drownings, and just bring that up and explain that to our audience? If not, I think I have it open on my end.
Well, I got 2 of them. Okay, do you have the children's map up?
Yes.
Okay, that's the children's map with ages by state. We're going to run out of room pretty soon. There's going to be numbers all over the place. Again, we're not trying to get every empirical age data number listed. We're trying to identify places that we need to focus efforts if you're involved in that state or if you're involved in the national picture. This is updated every month. I overwrite the program, so if somebody thinks they want to compare month to month, they should rename and save copies of this map. I'm not going to. And if a number's underlined, it means that that's a 10-year-old. Like under Arkansas, you see the 10 under the A. Underlined, that's 10. That's not a 1 and a 0. Because we track 12 and unders in this case.
So, Mick, this is just from 2019 so far.
This just started this year. You know, I thought there was a need, and now we realize actually that there's more than one need, that it's got different uses. The other one that's going to be updated, let me drag this up. Okay, you get this one now?
Yes.
I do get a medal for being able to handle the mouse.
You're doing really well.
Thank you. This will be updated next month because we track July to July. So the new one will say drownings by state, July 2008 to July 2019. And these state numbers will all be updated. But again, it'll let you take a look at it. And then when you go to our spreadsheet, the first spreadsheet we dealt with, if you go to the far right, even past some of the media data, we list these with just the numbers, not on a map, in a table form. And it is done 2 ways. It's done alphabetically, so you can find your state quick, and it's done then in numerical order. Okay?
So, Nick, a question that's come in with this is, are those numbers representative of all age groups, or is this
Yep.
just children?
Those are total drownings.
Okay.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people want to track just kids. So you can do that search. You know, you can highlight that, search it, and you can record your own numbers for your state if, you know, 4 and unders are your focus, or if 0 through 12-year-olds are your focus, or if teenagers are your focus. You can extract that data. If you can't, you can find someone to help you with Excel, or you can email me and I can try to do it. I'd rather see you learn a little bit more about Excel and how to, you know, do find features. That way you control the information that you need.
Sure, sure, excellent.
But I'll help. I'm not going to turn you away.
So, Mick, is there anything else you'd like to share on your data collection? Anything we didn't get a chance to discuss today?
Well, we got 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
I think this is the most important thing that we do. I guess I want to ask, what do we do about this? Whenever we speak publicly at different conventions and different meetings, we always ask 4 basic questions. And the first one is, if we can get ADA laws passed, that's American with Disabilities Act, that helps some people be safer, why can't we get flotation device laws not only passed but enforced? We estimate we could have saved 1,370 people in the last 8 years if PFD, personal flotation devices, were mandatory, and someone said, you can't do that without this in guarded situations. We have the laws, we're not enforcing them enough. These are, you know, if you're watching the political debates yesterday and you'll watch them again tonight and watch them, some very in tune person always asks, why aren't we concentrating on something we can get done rather than sitting here and abstractly talking about the impossible? Those are the kind of people I like to talk to with some common sense. These are common sense things. The second one we always ask is, why doesn't every pool and spa sold have a safety sheet that's included with it? Why aren't the manufacturers required to do this with even possibly a CD? A 8x10 sticker warning should be attached to every pool and spa. I know that they throw it in an envelope, some of them do, but it never gets posted. That should be a law. You know, you can't buy a gun without a license. Why are you allowed to buy a pool without being educated about what a pool is and how to be safe around it? That it totally escapes me. The third one is, if we can get an act like the Virginia Graham-Baker Act passed, and that's entrapment laws, and I'm all for them. But we had a law made to try to help something that's happened 11 times in modern days. Why can't we get safety ladder laws passed that would eliminate a tragedy that's happened 417 times in the last 8 years? An above ground pool ladder that can't be clumbed or scaled by a child. Why do we allow the garbage ladders that come with above ground pools to ever be put in the box? That's, to me, I'm sorry, it's criminal. And then the other one, which I think is the most important, is if we can require children to be properly vaccinated before entering kindergarten, grade school, why can't we require children to prove they can swim prior to entering the 4th grade?
That's a good point. Yeah.
They have to prove it, and that's up to the educational systems, the states, the counties. We have school districts doing it now in Greensboro, North Carolina. Okay, but you teach a child how to cross the street so they don't step off the curb and get run over. But we don't teach them the safety around the water. And that needs to be done during the school system. I just don't trust it being done at home. Sorry. You have to prove to me that you've been through and passed something as simple as a Boy Scout swimming test. or you don't go into fourth grade. And I know that's radical, but so is a child drowning radical.
Yeah, absolutely.
So why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we putting big minds, famous people? I loved watching golf tournament in St. Jude because all the movie people come out. We fight kids cancer. We need to get some high profile people saying we need to stop drowning. Okay, and I'm not talking about all us that love preaching to the choir. You know, we need to get some help. So those are my 4 things that I think these can be done right now. And if I do this with children in 20 years, I will have addressed the adult problem other than just basic Darwinistic stupidity. Okay, so we attack the adult and teenager problem by starting now and getting the child thing solved. Okay.
So Mick, one last question's been submitted in. Will you be presenting on this at the 2020 National Water Safety Conference in Fort Worth? I think we would invite you to present your updated data at the 2020.
I have been.
Excellent, excellent. So we'll look.
I've been doing it. What I've been doing is in a breakout session. I think Sue has talked to different people and saying, giving 30 minutes in front of the General Assembly. Okay. I'll be willing to talk to anybody at any time about this. Again, I'm a practical person. I know we can't stop drowning, but we have to improve these numbers. And I think we do have the ability to do that. I think we've been doing that. I'm just greedy. I want more.
I think we all are on that front.
Yep.
Absolutely. So, Mick, I know we only have a couple minutes left, and we didn't get to the second part of our discussion today, which was on commercial aquatic facilities. So I'm just going to ask you one question, and I'm sure, we could spend a whole other hour talking about this, but, in my view, coming from, much like you do, the commercial side of facility management and aquatics, that's what brought me into drowning prevention. What's your take on, what commercial aquatic facilities' role in our overall drowning prevention picture is? I know they're swim lessons providers, they're great places for family gatherings, for fun in the community, but I believe, and I'm sure you do, that they have a role in our overall drowning prevention picture.
Oh, absolutely. We have more commercial pools than the next 10 countries combined. We have over 270,000 commercial pools in this country. Now, commercial is a big, commercial is not a family backyard pool. Okay, it's open to the public somehow. So whether it be Learn to Swim, a motel pool, a university mega, they're all commercial pools. More than 2/3 of those have some kind of Learn to Swim already in place. They are our main source for scholarship lessons to people that don't necessarily have the economic ability to take their kids to pay for swim lessons. Most of these pools are subsidized by tax dollars, by bond issues, by donations. They play a huge part. They play the most important part in getting kids to learn how to swim. Then the slack is taken up by country clubs during the summertime, surf and turf clubs during the summertime, the fitness centers, the independent swim lessons, strip mall type places. They pick up the slack. So it's at least a 2-prong, if not a multi-prong approach. But commercial pools play an extremely important part in this. And we work with a lot of them. We have lessons providers. I'm not doing any commercials, and I promise myself I'm not mentioning any names during this presentation, but probably the top 10 lessons providers are all what we call professional providers. We work back and forth with them and help them whenever they need help and try to let people know about them. One thing I will tell you really quickly here is that under USA Swimming Foundation's webpage, there is a swim lessons finder feature that you can click on it, and it will tell you the best lessons providers in the area that you're asking about. Okay.
So I know we're at time, but one follow-up question to that, and then we'll get everyone out of here. Is there anything you think facilities should or could be doing better that we should really either as advocates, try to reach out to our local aquatic facilities and work with them on, or, should we be doing better outreach, or is there something in this picture that could be done better?
I think that no one should ever build a single pool facility. We need to start building lessons, warmer water teaching pools, programming pools, lessons pools with every single pool that we're being built for another reason. Number one reason a child, 8 and 10-year-old, especially boys, cry at the first lesson and don't want to come back is because the water's too cold. 87 to 88 degrees is ideal temperature for a lot of aquatic program, whether it be vertical aquatic adult programming, which is another hour-long discussion someday, or whether it be learn to swim. But we need warmer water. And we've been working on that. We've got some of the best designers out there on the train. They've left the station. They're doing this. They're saying 2 pools, 2 pools, 2 pools. We still have a ways to go. So stop building the 81-degree lap pool and expecting it to service the entire community. It's just not going to happen.
I hear that complaint every day from my members with a facility right outside my door. And
well, yeah, of course you do.
Yeah, well,
we do what we can.
I keep mine at 85, so they I get it more
Perfect
from lap swimmers than I do the aquatic fitness therapy swim lesson side, but my lap swimmers don't like it. So
I know.
Yeah, with that, thank you, Mick, so much for joining us today. Again, I'm going to post this in the chat on the screen. If you'd like to reach out and get copies of the data collected by Mick, Sue, his wife, her email is in the chat bubble twice. Feel free to reach out to Sue and sign up for that. So again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today, and a special thank you to USA Swimming for allowing us to borrow Mick for not just today, but a lot of different projects. And thanks for sharing your expertise with us, Mick. Mark your calendars for our next 2 webinars. Our next one is 2 weeks from today on August 14th. We're going to be joined by the National Safe Boating Council for a conversation on recreational boating safety. And then on August 28th, we're going to be joined by Stop Drowning Now and Collins Hope for our Back to School webinar on how we can better advocate for water safety education in schools. Call for presentations for the 2020 National Water Safety Conference is now open. You can submit a presentation and learn more about our conference at watersafetyconference.org. Thanks everyone for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks, Mick.
Hey, do something, save a life.
Right.